The following is a special presentation of Tony Curry Radio. Keep your mission on your mind and your mind on your mission. This is Mission Minded with Michael Coleman.
Welcome back to the Mission Minded. Keep your mind, your mission, your mind. Coming soon to a radio station near you. We're going terrestrial. Not to say, Mike, Michael Coleman is the CEO of the Heart of Alabama Food Bank. We're doing really, really well on Tony Curry Radio. We created our own thing. I knew it was going to take some time. We're into our 5th year of this.
Yeah.
I do have a love affair with terrestrial radio. I love sitting in a studio with somebody, and I like having a director and a producer and the TV. I love all that stuff. And so we got this opportunity, and it had to be just right for us. It had to be a show about what we wanted to talk about. It had to be at least an hour long. It had to be anything we wanted to talk about. In other words, they don't have any of the time. We get the entire hour, and it had to be on the biggest flipping stick in the state of Alabama and on the best time. I don't think that's asking too much, do you?
No, we just want everything our way.
We got it. So we're on a 100,000 watt stick. It's the only one in the state. It's on 101.1 The Truth. You are like, what? I've never even heard of 101.1. Well, you will. And it's from 5 to 6 o'clock, and it starts in March. It's called Mission Minded. It's going to be huge. And of course, you can also hear snippets of our show on social media, everything else. We're in the process of getting everything together. I'm really excited about doing that show. I've been hitting the streets and telling everybody about it. And it's going to be a Christian business show. And people are like, you're doing a Christian show? And I'm like, yeah. They're like, wow, that's kind of crazy. Like, it is kind of crazy. And I'm not going to apologize for it. We're wide open. I'm sure I'm going to say some things I probably shouldn't say on a Christian radio station, but that's just me. I'm real. I'm a sinner. I'm a sinner. You know, I hate the sin, love the sinner. Please. But it should be fun. We are going to talk about business on the show, on the new one. And we're going to talk about that today in economics. You had several phrases you wanted to get into that I think are really interesting, and interest rates is certainly one of them. But I wanted to start with one that everyone's talking about, everyone's kind of sick of. It could be the word of the year, affordability. Everyone's talking affordability. What is affordability? What does it mean? I think it means different things to different people. Let's start right there. What does affordability mean to Michael Coleman?
Well, it's one of those terms that on the surface, it's just an all-encompassing term, which is, can I live the life that I want, or at least the basic needs of my life? And we think, do I have enough food for my family? Can I clothe my family? Can I educate my family? Can I prosper in life? And so affordability captures all the different elements of our society and just our existence as people. And the term, we started hearing a lot about it, and when I first started hearing about it was maybe back in the spring. It really started being emphasized, and I think in part because Donald Trump, love him or hate him, when he started moving very, very fast.
Mm-hmm.
And the Democrats were really struggling to kind of get their feet up on him, because by the time they started criticizing him on one thing, he had already jumped to the other thing, and they just really struggling, at least seemingly so, to get a message. And so they tried several different things that weren't successful, but the polls suggest that when they started talking about this term affordability, it's people's pocketbooks, basic economics of your family. They started to catch some ground. They started to get their legs up under them in terms of their messaging, and so they started hitting on this term, which, depending on your situation, could mean a lot of things, but it talks about inflation, or just the cost of our essentials, and income levels. Are they rising? Are they falling? What's the overall economy doing? Am I at risk of losing my job? Is there fear?
I think the one thing, affordability is affordability. Can I afford bread? Can I afford gas? Can I afford whatever? I get that part of it. I think the one thing that we have a really difficult time in the United States with is cutting back. When we set a standard I always thought that if I made $1,000 for every year of my age, I was going to be fine. This was like I was 22. I was making 22 grand a year. I thought, man, when I'm
Yeah.
30, I'm making 30. I'm gonna be okay. If I'm 40, I'm gonna make it 40. I should be fine. Well, I'm
Yeah.
60 now. I'm making 60 grand. Ain't touching the bottom, but
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
not getting it
Yeah.
done. That's the way I
Yeah.
was thinking back in the 20s. Should tell you where I went to school. Um, but I know that when we set a standard of living, it's really hard to back off of that. And I think that
Sure.
we have gotten in this country a taste of look at a lot of us have gotten a lot of taste of the good life. You and I were talking about COVID. I think a lot of people got a lot of money from COVID, and I think a lot of it wasn't used for what it was supposed to. Probably three-fourths of it. We got more millionaires now in this country than we've ever had, and you would think that after having a shutdown for 2 or 3 years, we'd be hurting, but we're not hurting at all. Um, and whenever if you're used to taking that $4,000 vacation to the beach every year and you're used to driving nice cars, you're used to doing this, that, and the other, and then you have a family and you're trying to keep up with the Joneses. I'm just speaking from my personal standpoint. When you set your standards that you always think to yourself, damn it, if I can make an extra 20 or $30,000 a year, I could put that away, put that in the market, and have a nice little nest egg. We don't do that. We go buy a bigger house. We buy a nicer car. We spend it.
Yeah.
We go and
There's
most of the
a,
time, and there's this thing called entitlement, which I think we're really guilty of, and I'm as guilty as the next guy. But I work my ass off, and I'm entitled to that. I work really really hard, and I deserve to have the 3 bedroom instead of the 2 bedroom down at the beach, and that comes back to bite us sometimes. And we're not very good at cutting back when we can. And I think a lot of cases we can't. And I mentioned this before. I hear a lot of friends of mine talking about how hard it is, but yet they'll go out and drop $200 at Fleming's because it's their anniversary. Well, I don't know what to tell you, but what I guess I'm saying is I think a lot of us have to do with affordability. I think some of us can help our affordability in this situation.
well, I think well, let's go back way before COVID. We notice it within our families that as our standard of living has really risen, as we get more productive in our the GDP of our nation, which is just your total goods output, what's the value of everything you create? We're the most prosperous nation in history, and a lot of people have come along and just we have so many great qualities where you can create your own business, but we have the internet, and productivity just skyrocketed. It continues to skyrocket now with AI. But as we have gotten more income and more abilities and more technology, sometimes we don't always make sound financial decisions because we've been exposed. Now think about this. That's basic marketing 101 is if I have an iPhone 15 and the iPhone 16 comes out,
Mhm.
they want me to think that the I-15 just started to suck all of a sudden, and I
Yep.
need to upgrade. And what are other people going to think about me if I don't have the latest? And so it gets into the status symbol. I've talked for years about kids today when they grow up, and especially when they're 16, they don't ask, "Am I going to get a car?" It's what kind of car am I going to choose to
Yep.
drive?
Yeah.
So when they get 18, 19, 20, they've never had to do without anything. So we were not taught how to discipline ourselves, how to say no. That's why you'll have people. I will never forget this story. I had a cousin who was a president of a bank in the Huntsville area. And actually, it was a credit union. And she said they made $1 million a month on nothing but fees assessed to debit cards because you could go in the hole but
Mhm.
it would be like a $30 fee. But they were going in the hole for a $5 order at McDonald's.
Yeah.
So because you just couldn't, so we couldn't resist. Right now, we don't want to get up off the couch, so we'll pay an extra 10, 15, $20 to have somebody go out and get it and bring it to us. So the difficulty that we have sometimes is denying ourselves we don't like experiencing discomfort, and look, I'll be totally honest that, like you said, we get to the point sometimes where we're like, we deserve this, and sometimes maybe we feel like, hey, but the question is, it depends on what this is. When you say, especially from a faith-based perspective, if I have this home, I have a place, I have enough food, if I have the basic things that I need, that's what God promises to provide. But when we start looking beyond that and thinking, well, I should have this or I deserve it, how far do you go with that?
Yeah.
Is it that everybody deserves a beach house? Is it that everybody who works hard deserves four cars? You know what I'm saying?
Sure. Yeah.
It, it's
I,
no way to
man,
almost reel it back.
and I'm so glad you brought that up because I think the audience that we talk to are probably 35 and up. And we're certainly skewed towards younger people because it's important that you listen to what we got to say, not only from a biblical standpoint, but certainly from an economic one. But we will pay anything for convenience. I
Oh yeah,
totally don't get the stuff. I totally don't get the delivery service. I don't know how it makes money. I don't care. My son is like, I'm going to have Taco Bell delivered, and I'm like, you're paying $17 for a $9 meal. I don't get it. I just for the
yeah,
sake, and he goes, well, it cost me that much to drive gas. No, it wouldn't. Then maybe you
yeah.
don't need to get Taco Bell.
Well,
Then
that's the whole thing.
I
The
I
saying
will,
no to yourself.
yeah,
Yeah,
I will say this, and you and I know each other really well, and I share a lot of things with you as a business confidant. I probably share too much with you, but we're friends first, and you'll always be a friend of mine first. And I've been through some really tough economic times over the last few years since my divorce. It is a killer. It sucks. Um, but man, I can remember going like a month and a half. It literally was like $16 in my pocket.
yeah,
I sat down with the kids and said, "Listen, here's the situation. I'm in a business where I can't go make people pay me. I had like several accounts over 90 days, and I said, you can blame whoever you want, but here's the situation, man.
yeah,
Those no Zaxby's this week.
yeah.
Don't ask me for to get your nails done. Da, 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 da. I'm not being
Right,
a
right.
badass, but
Yeah,
I'm just telling you, this ain't the time to
yeah,
ask for it. It was right around the holidays too, and I remember just
yeah,
thinking that. And I'm telling you, man, um, I figured it out. We got through it. It was one of the
that's right.
best holidays I ever had. And I
Yeah,
think it was one of the best holidays because we had to figure it out.
yeah,
We couldn't go to movies and we couldn't do all these things. We couldn't go drop $200 or $300 wherever we wanted to go or go shop. And I just really feel like we were kind of all on a vibe, a brainwave. Okay, this is how we're going to do it, and we're going to do it together, and we did it together.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I still think back in those days. Oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I don't have gas money, or I don't have the blah blah blah. You'll figure it out. I will tell you this, and I think we've lost this a little bit too. And I know that you were in the armed forces. We're 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 afraid to work too hard. Hard work doesn't kill anybody. I'm not saying to be a
yeah,
workaholic. I'm not talking about putting in 80 hours a week. I'm not talking about taking time away from your family to go, spend a night at the office and this, that, and the other. But hard work never killed anybody, and that's why these people come from Guatemala and
yeah,
Venezuela and Mexico because they're willing to work their asses off for it.
yeah.
I
Well,
got a guy.
let's talk.
Yeah, I was gonna say I
Go
got a guy
ahead.
down the street. I got a guy down the street. I've lived here for 4 years in this house. I got a guy down the street to live right next door to me. Um, Play stuff in the front yard, 4 or 5 cars in the front yard, old washing machine on the front. The home association was always giving him hell.
Yeah,
His name's Jose. He bought a house down the street that is a palace. I mean, and he had all of his buddies, all of his landscaping guys, and all of his roofers, and all these guys, and they
yeah,
came over in the course of 3 months. They built this palace, and it's unbelievable. It's the finest looking house in Russet Woods because he was willing to put in 16, 17 hours a day. Didn't care what kind of vehicle he was driving. He had to have his family living with him. There was like 16 people living in the house. But my point being is, if you work hard and you have a purpose, you do it for the right reasons, you can do well in this country. And I think that's what a lot of people see.
you can. You can go from, you don't have to be born into money. You don't have to be born into power. You can be nothing and become anything. And that's a wonderful thing about our country. Let me say this about affordability. You know, it really isn't about living comfortably when you talk about that term and all the elements. it's really about just how to survive without constant financial strain. And so when you talk about declining affordability, and this is what the politicians are emphasizing, um, you see things like rising food insecurity. That's what I see, because people are like, okay, I don't have enough money coming in for what it takes for my basic necessities.
Hmm.
And so think about that, just some of the elements. So you've got your income level, which everybody knows what that is. Um, well, when you have the money coming in, uh, but each year, even with a good inflation rate, where so inflation is the cost of everything going up. So you could have, let's say, a 3% overall inflation rate, which I think the target with the federal government is 2% per
It
year
is.
is what they try to
It is.
do.
Uh-huh.
And right now we're at about 2.7, which is not unreasonable. I just saw where Turkey was doing something and was bringing theirs down to 30% this
Yeah.
year.
Hmm.
So, sometimes we need a little perspective, but the reality is when you are somebody who is best case scenario, you're able to make ends meet. Well, then if you're in a job that you're not getting a raise every year, well, that means you're losing 3% of your buying power every year. Then you add things like interest rates, and you hear that a lot, that we hear the government and Trump's always fighting with Jerome Powell. It's amazing how many people really don't even understand the Federal Reserve. A lot of people don't understand the relationship between the executive branch, the judicial branch, legislative branch, and then the Federal Reserve is not a fourth branch of government. It's under the executive branch, but it's also it's privatized.
Hmm.
And the reason it's that way is so that Trump, other presidents have gotten uh, interfered. So they are in charge of keeping inflation low. They are in charge, and they raise interest rates up and down um, to help the economy uh, move along. So, for instance, inflation is often caused by when you dump too much money in the economy.
Yep.
Okay. And I don't want to go into all the technical. I don't want to make this boring. You have to talk about some technical things. But a good example was when we gave everybody $1 trillion during COVID. Okay. All that money went to the economy.
Hmm.
Everything shot up. Okay. Um, well, some areas shot up really high, some stayed relatively low. Overall, it was a certain rate. But the two things that shot up the highest were fuel and food. And we endured that for several years. And you think, well, why does that matter when it comes to affordability? Well, if you think somebody is barely able to make ends meet, then the two factors that are going to affect them more than anything else is gas and how much it costs to get to work,
Hmm.
and food that they put on their table. And so when you have those kind of things, people a lot of times talk about, when they talk about affordability, it's just a general sense of it's just life is just such a struggle. But the more we learn about these areas, so let me just give you an example about income levels, or let's just use a term like GDP, which is gross domestic product. You say, okay, well, why does that matter? Why do things like a potential recession matter? Well, because if GDP is moving forward in a healthy way, that tends to show you that the economy is healthy. If the economy is doing well overall, there'll be certain sectors not doing as well as others. But if the overall economy is doing well, that means more money comes in. In theory, wages will rise.
Hmm.
The more the company have, the more they have to take care of their good employees. Now, if you're not a good employee and you have a rotten attitude, I mean, that's a whole different area as to why you
Yeah.
can't move up. But if you're a good employee, uh, you, and the economy is healthier, your business should be doing better. You should be able to make more money and all of that. But the things that then oftentimes what happens, what you've seen is if inflation starts to rise, well, then the Federal Reserve wants to reduce that amount of money. Well, how do you do that? How do you take money out of or slow down the money being poured into the economy? Well, you raise interest rates and makes it harder to borrow or more expensive to borrow. So all these factors are playing together, and at any given time, I could make an argument as to why Donald Trump's choices are terrible for working families. And then I could turn over here and take all these other factors that he's brought gas down, he's brought inflation down from the 9% under, I mean, it was almost 10% under Joe Biden. You could get into a lot of specifics and say things are better. Uh, so you constantly have people talking about affordability in negative ways. And part of what we have is that individuals like going back to how we just started. If I'm sitting here and going, okay, my job could be at risk, there may be a recession, uh, I'm losing money because of interest rate, because of inflation every
Mhm.
year, interest rates aren't coming down. Here's where the bottom line, here's where the is I've got to ask, what have I got to do differently? Because I can't control GDP, I
Mhm.
can't control inflation, I can't control monetary policy. But you know what I can control? I can control, do I want to get a second job? I can control, do I want to do a better job of saving and not eat out? I can control my entertainment expenses. Does it suck? Yes, of course it does. And nobody wants to do that. But the reality is that we almost say, well, we're having trouble affording it without necessarily looking within ourselves and
Sure.
seeing what we're doing that's contributing to the lack of affordability.
Yeah, and let's say right now, Donald Trump's not the first president to ever want the interest rates to go down. I mean, that's great for presidents because when the interest rates go down, the stock market goes up. It's easier to borrow money, and everyone's happy. Everyone's got more money, and but you got to pay that back. As of January 2026, this just popped up on my phone of all things. The U.S. national debt just passed $38 trillion this morning.
Yeah.
That's a nice big fat number on my car turned 250,000 miles. And I took a picture of it. $38 trillion dollars. It just surpassed early this morning. And I remember when my wife and I got together, we were married and she had some credit card stuff, and I had some credit card stuff. And I said, let's get a debt consolidation loan.
Mhm.
And we pay one thing off, and it'll save us money, and they'll pay all these things off, and you have to keep them open, where your numbers stay good. And so
Yeah.
I remember it was like I don't know, $40,000. I think it was like $40,000. And I remember thinking to myself, and she did too. She's like, well, since we've got this debt consolidation loan, if
Yeah.
we would go out and get another credit card right now and charge it up five, six, $7,000, that's only going to add 17 more dollars per month to our consolidation loan. It's just like it's so stupid, but it's true. And so
Yeah.
she's like, "Well, you needed that wardrobe, right? You need that wardrobe, and we need a new stove." So next thing you know, we're out buying, and we're getting into debt consolidation because we're broke because we couldn't afford our monthly payments, right? So what are we doing?
Yeah.
We're out spending money, and I'm getting a new
Yeah.
wardrobe and shit because And then next
Yeah.
thing you know, and it only went up $17, $17, and so that's how we think, and it's so silly,
It's human nature, and I totally get it.
Yeah.
We always say, when I get a raise, I'm going to save that money. But what tends to happen is every time I got a raise in the military, my standard of living rose
Mm.
rather than keeping the same standard of living. And look, I 100% understand where you are because for so many years, single income, I was enlisted for half my time in the Army. And for the first 12 years of my life, it was month to month. I mean, there was literally
Yeah.
nothing extra, and it was a strain and a stress trying to raise a family and be in the military and try to make it. But the bottom line was, we had to display that discipline in order to do that. Now, and
And I
and the
think it's
idea
really
is
important,
that,
real quick. I think it's really
yeah,
important that your kids see it too. I mean, I got a 21-year-old at Clemson. He needs to know how difficult it is. And we haven't gone on
That's what I'm
vacation
saying.
last
Our
year.
kids want to start at the same
Yeah,
level.
and I want my kids to have the good things too, and I really do. And when you have a divorce, you always want to outdo the other parent. You want to make sure so you're buying more than. And listen, eventually you come down and say, "Listen, I'm doing this. It's going to hurt, but we can't do this, and this year. We just can't do it because And I promise you, your kids will look at that and they will revere you and love you even more for it. They'll go, "Wow, Dad's looking down the road for us." Or Mom's looking down the road for us.
They won't understand it then, but when they become an adult and they have a different perspective of where they're churning to provide an income, they will look back on those lessons and see value in them rather than the pain and discomfort.
Yeah. We only got a couple minutes, and I don't want to get any more stuff because I think we get into stuff. So let's continue the show next week. Because I think it's important. I want to learn I think this is perfect for us with our new show coming up too, because I need to learn a little economy 101.
Okay.
And I've got an idea for Bite by Bite, which is coming up here next on our host of radio stations for Tony Curry Radio. I want to throw out an idea. You and I have not discussed this. I'm going to throw out an idea that I think could solve hunger in the United States of America.
Okay.
How about that? And make some money doing the same thing. All right.
Interesting.
We're going to do that coming up here next. Make sure you check it out. Get the TKR app, Tony Curry Radio. We've got over 100,000 folks already enjoying it. Thousands of people listen every single week. We got 18 different shows. We're going to have this new one on terrestrial radio, and I fully expect within a couple of years we're going to be syndicated in all kinds of different markets. Looking forward to doing it with Michael, so it's going to be good stuff. Info at TonyCurryRadio.net. Info at TonyCurryRadio.net. Feel free to give us emails. We go through this as well. Until next time, we'll do it next week, my friend. Bite by Bite's up here next, right here on Tony Curry Radio. Thank you.
Thank you, man.
This has been a special presentation of Tony Curry Radio.